Chiao, what do you make, Mr. Chiao, of the latest budget increase for NASA, at least on some of the most exciting developments?
Right, so NASA is actually in pretty good shape. They actually, after the negotiations with OMB, I think came out a little bit with a small cut, but they're very happy that their cut was very small. And there's, of course, the opportunity for getting some more added back in later. But it's very exciting because for the first time in a long time, I've been a member of the NASA Advisory Council Committee on Human Exploration and Operations and Commercial. We saw some real evolution in the architecture, and we saw the introduction of something called the Deep Space Gateway around the moon, and a deep space transport that will take expeditions farther away, as well as to conduct operations on the moon. So this is an exciting time for NASA.
It is an exciting time. We still remember, Mr. Yang, that during the last Republican administration, things have not been that promising. It seems that George W. Bush, president then, was cutting NASA budget on a big way. And yet now there's a change of mindset. What do you think from the Chinese perspective is driving that change in the US?
Well, what you mentioned is a constellation program. It will go to the moon first and then go to the Mars. The Obama government canceled this constellation program because it thinks that it is meaningless to repeat the Apollo program. So it will direct go to the Mars. But the problem of the Obama government is it also has a step to have a so-called ARM, or asteroid redirection mission. So this mission, at this time, the Trump government is canceled this program. I think this is a good choice because the ARM program has many so-called dead-end technology. This kind of technology only can be used in the ARM and cannot used by the final destination, Mars. So you can see that both the Obama government and the Trump government has the same goal to go to the Mars. The only difference is how to achieve it.
That's right. Mr. Chiao, being there as a veteran, what do you make of the government's decision, particularly White House decision at various administrations, about the role of NASA and their ambitions concerning the U.S. space programs, whether it's Mars or the moon or the other side of the outer space?
Well, NASA, of course, is our government space agency
That's
here
right.
in the United States, so it will always take the leadership role, and it will always take the lead in exploration programs. And so I think it's natural for NASA to work with contractors, as it always has. But this is a new era. As you pointed out, commercial is coming up. They're doing some very exciting things, the neat things going on at SpaceX and with Blue Origin. I think there's big opportunities for private government or commercial government collaborations on exploration, which is a big difference from the past in that in this case, both entities would be investing in the exploration instead of just the contractor building the hardware for the U.S. government. So this opens up a great deal of possibilities with both of these big commercial companies as well as others that will follow.
Well, you're talking about certainly an interesting way of cooperation, which is public-private partnership, as they say, PPP. Talking about the PPP, public-private partnership, let's take a look at the achievements of both NASA and SpaceX. The final mission of NASA's Atlantis in 2011 marked the end of the 3-decade space shuttle program. Then after 3 years in 2014, NASA launched a new spacecraft into space. For SpaceX, between 2015 and 2017, it successfully recycled rockets, something unimaginable before. But the question is, Professor Yang, that is, how much do you think entities like SpaceX will be able to do in terms of capabilities and also credibilities to substitute the original role of NASA, for example?
Well, you know, actually speaking, the commercial space flight begins since the Obama program. I have a little difference from the opinion of Dr. Leroy Chiao.
Go ahead.
Because you know that in the years before, as Dr. Chiao have mentioned, the private sector only made the hardware. But since the Obama government, it only not only asks the private sectors to provide the hardware, but also provide the services. That is the so-called the commercial orbital transportation services. So it has already begun in Obama government, but now in Trump government, I think the opinion of this government is to enhance this commercial space flight because as a continuous opinion that this kind of activities will save much of the money because it thinks that NASA does not use the money so efficiently like the private sectors. But the problem is how can the private companies have a good balance between the low cost and reliability? I always ask these questions, but no any private companies can answer this question.
Well, even if Mr. Chiao is not coming from the private sector, but probably as one from NASA, he has a better understanding about this balance. The credibility, safety vis-a-vis low cost.
Right, and so I actually absolutely agree. The commercial side has been operating commercially since under the Obama administration with the commercial logistics and coming commercial crew programs. But my point about exploration is that both will have to make investments, both the private sector and the government will have to make investments for exploration, not merely for space station operation support. But as far as safety goes, absolutely. I mean, all the efforts that are being done now with SpaceX, with Boeing, with Orbital ATK, all the providers and future providers that we've gotten under contract, they will have oversight from NASA. All of NASA's experience, NASA's oversight will make sure that these vehicles are safe to fly. And the commercial operators themselves have even a bigger interest in safety. If they have an accident that's going to ruin their reputation before they even get started.
Of course, nobody wants to have an accident, but accidents happen, as we all know very well. Knock the wood, Mr. Chiao. So the thing is, who will trust, service providers such as SpaceX and some of the others from the private sector? Mr. Chiao, we have also heard from some of the big names in the space industry in the U.S. suggesting if Elon Musk himself get on that flight and safely coming back himself first, then others going to take those flights. What do you make of suggestions like this?
Oh, sure. Well, that was kind of a off-the-cuff remark by, I believe, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's right.
When asked if he would get on one of Elon Musk's vehicles to go to Mars. And so going to Mars is a whole different thing than going up to low Earth orbit in one of the vehicles that are currently being developed. Of course, it's an evolution. And so once you're able to operate safely in low Earth orbit, maybe send some vehicles to the moon, which Elon Musk has already said he's going to do in the next few years, do a lunar flyby with a couple of paying customers, then it's an evolution. And so absolutely there's going to be oversight, there's going to be checks and balances. Nobody's going to be launching any haphazard missions. All U.S. launches or all launches by United States companies have to be approved by the FAA, whether they happen in the United States or outside of the United States. Right. So I think there's plenty of checks and balances to make sure that things are done in a reasonable manner and also in a very safe manner.
Well, Mr. Chiao, you are an astronaut yourself, so you understand about safety more than anybody else. It is, however, clear that in history, tragedies do happen with Challenger, for example, with Columbia, for example. All of the things have deeply carved in our memories. So, Mr. Yang, having said that though, it is not just about the safety. It is also about the reputation of the space industry and also the future goals of the space development. I still remember very young watching TV and saw the tragic incident of the Challenger. So, Professor Yang, we all hope things are going very well, but once again, what do you make eventually the role of the public and the private sector in terms of making sure about the safety issue?
You are very correct. I can also remember the Challenger disaster. It is the only time that China's put the foreign news at the first and the domestic news behind that. So it is the only time in China's CCTV's history. So the Challenger disaster is one important reason of the United States to cancel the space shuttle program. And also, I have many friends in FAA, and also they told me that they do everything to ensure the safety. But the problem is, many of my friends either from the US or Europe or China thinks that Elon Musk, obviously, he cares more about the cost. So I think the disaster happened last year. The problem of the oxygen tank of the Falcon 9 happens is not only a rhythm issue. So I think in the future the private sectors should pay more to the safety. The background is that because the U.S. government thinks the flight, either the manned flight or the robotic missions on the low Earth orbit is already very practical. That is the reason the U.S. choose the private companies to do so.
But you know, of course, we could scrutinize all of these decisions and look back in history and in hindsight being smart. But Mr. Chiao, there has to be a way to test the new grounds. And that is exactly what NASA has been, and it seems that the US government has been trying to do. But at this point, what do you think of the initial stage, the quality of it, about this public-private partnership? What kind of lessons and experiences do you think so far the U.S. could provide for the other space operators around the world?
Well, I think the model is working here in the United States. It's working well. We've gotten SpaceX and Orbital ATK currently providing logistics to the International Space Station. Starting sometime in the next year or two, we're going to have astronaut flights aboard SpaceX spacecraft as well as Boeing spacecraft, taking astronauts, U.S. astronauts, to and from the International Space Station. And so it's an evolution. As we go out and we go farther to explore and do new things, we're going to have to accept more risk. I mean, this is what we do because you do have to test new hardware. Of course, you test everything you can, but you cannot eliminate all risk. The only safe way to do something is not to do it at all. And so we have to recognize, just as we did during the Apollo era to the moon, that we have to accept risk and we have to take risk. And so it's a balance. You have to take a reasonable amount of risk and you have to do as much as you can, practically speaking, to minimize those risks and manage those risks. But ultimately, if you're going to go explore, you're going to accept some risk.
Yeah, Mr. Chiao talking about this necessary, in his words, evolution in terms of how space programs should be operated and run in his country. Does that provide much suggestions or inspirations for China, or even lessons for China?
Well, that's quite different. You know that, as I mentioned, the Obama government canceled the Constellation program because it is meaningless for them to repeat the Apollo program. The Constellation, the only difference is that it will have 4 astronauts landed on the moon at one time, while Apollo program have 2. But for countries like Russia and China, like Europe, for us to have this goal, we must repeat something like the Apollo program. That's a very necessary step from the technological
And that
concern.
will be done by the public sector, in other words, the government agencies and related state-owned enterprises, where it's likely to be also a chance for private sectors to participate.
I believe it is a chance also for private sectors. You know that the commercial flight, although we argue about the balance between cost and reliability, but it already has become a trend of the whole world to have more commercial factors and also more private sectors to attend the space activities. Either it will be a purely commercial application or the scientific exploration.
But eventually the question is, Mr. Chiao, from your perspective, how much of percentage, in a way, are the profits, the achievements, scientific expedition results likely to be shared if private sector also participate as the service provider?
Well, the interesting thing is that Elon Musk wants to explore. He said that he created SpaceX specifically because he himself wants to travel to Mars. And so that's why, even though SpaceX is a public company, he controls the stock, and so that he doesn't have any board or shareholders that can vote to tell him that he cannot go explore. Now, he's got a business model where he's going to make enough money to fund these ventures, and so it's an interesting difference between a normal public U.S. company and the goals of that company being motivated not only by making money but also by exploration. Similarly, Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos has a passion for space. He recently announced plans to create infrastructure in space so that more people can live and work up there. I'm not completely familiar with his business plan on that, but the interesting thing again there is that you have these two leaders, founders of these companies, that have control of their companies that are motivated not only by profit but also by exploration and infrastructure.
That's true. I'm looking forward to a future development of this public-private partnership. We'll see where it is going.